Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
We'll find each other in every lifetime, Chaos Kids. I'm Naomi.
Oh, I hope so. I'm Amber. This is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Please don't leave me behind in some weird lifetime.
Without me?
Yeah. I'm like, hello.
Every lifetime, guaranteed.
Good.
Oh, hi, sister.
Hi, sister.
You were looking at recipes for homemade chicken nuggets.
That's right. I follow, I guess I follow her, Teeny. She's the cutest. She really is, Teeny.
Okay.
And she's like a home cook, although she is professionally trained. She makes everything from scratch. Even if she's doing burgers, she starts with the buns.
I'm totally down. I recently started making my own flour tortillas.
I bet those are delicious.
I mean, they're really fucking good. They don't look great. They're not round.
What are they? Just some non-shaped shape?
They're like blobby. They look like something inside us, like a cell. Like the drawing where it's like all around. Yeah. So it's
like, I found the nucleus.
It's not. They're not round. But I make things for the kids to freeze for easy, access later that they would sometimes buy frozen at the store, like pre-made. And so I've been making them from scratch, like we were talking about, so that I know what's in it and it's simple ingredients. And so I started making flour tortillas and they're really good. And the kids seem to really like the taquitos that I make with them. So
ooh, I love a good taquito.
I do one.
Will you send me your flour tortilla
I will send you the recipe and I'll tell you what I do. I do for Trinity, I make chicken taquitos very similar to the ones she used to buy, which is like, I do like a shredded chicken, like in the crock pot with the kind of just a Mexican flavor profile, like tomato sauce in there. And then it's just that. And then I shred it up and squeeze out the extra juice, and then some equal parts chicken and Monterey Jack cheese. That's literally all I do. And then for Sebastian, I do basically taco time crispy burrito types, but it's just beef in a taco seasoning mixed with a bunch of cheddar, finely shredded cheddar cheese, and then I roll them up and I brush them with oil.
God, you're such a nice house mom.
You are also a nice house mom.
Figure it out.
True. You are also a nice house mom. Don't act like you're not. I also started making Hot Pockets.
I am not taking custom orders.
I also started making Hot Pockets. This is all freezer food. Here. I started making Hot Pockets. They're actually quite delicious. I've gotten pretty good at them. I figured out a few combos for fillings and stuff. So I'm make a breakfast kind. I do a chicken and broccoli and cheddar kind. I've done pizza ones. They like them. Yeah. And then what you do is you can make I spend a day, I make all this stuff. I make big batches of all of it. And then I bake them all off. And then I par freeze them and then I bag them up. And then there's the freezer is stocked with grab and go frozen stuff that I made.
Oh my God. Wow.
I don't
That's
have
next
a job.
level, sister.
Are you drinking?
I'm drinking water. I literally just walked in the door. And so
nice.
I'm just, I'm hydrated. I walked home from work. Yeah, I've been doing some walking and
wine time.
Yeah, just not quite wine time yet. Okay. Do you want to know something?
Always
wine time. Want to know something weird? Okay, so the last crime story I did, which was Katie Sepich.
Yes.
And it took place in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Right.
Which I felt like I'd never heard of that town before. And in my regular podcast listening rotation this week, 2 of my regular listens, their crime stories took place in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Weird.
And one of them is a super famous case that I had no idea happened there, which was the bowling alley massacre.
That's vague bells. That's ringing the dimmest of bells.
Oh God. It's unsolved from the 90s, a whole family that owned and operated this bowling alley, including children, were all gunned down.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And I
So Las
knew.
Cruces is not the safe, fun college town they would have you think it is.
No, there's some shit going on there. My God. Weird.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's kind of interesting. That's
Yeah.
kind of like I was telling someone the other day about how like sometimes like oftentimes you and I will do stories and there will be these weird similarities or similar pieces within the story. We don't talk to each other before we do these stories. Like the episode with Aaron Hedges, whatever your crime was, I can't remember.
Mhm.
They both happened in the same year. We just happened to pick stories
Yeah.
that happened in the same year. Or like that time that we both did a survival story.
Yes.
You
So
had the
weird.
gal, the little girl that was on the anthill, and then like I did
Oh
what's her name?
God.
Julie, I think Julie Kopke, who survived the
The
plane
plane
crash. And we both had
yeah.
literally
Oh my
survival of like was the title of our stories in the same episode. It was like, how did we do that?
So wild.
It's weird.
There's a name for that thing though, too. I know we've talked about it before. And you'd think that, in the months since I could have just fucking Googled it, but I'll still just be perplexed. It's like when someone buys a new car and it's a make or model that you've never seen in your
But
life.
that's
And then you
different.
see it everywhere.
That's not quite the same to me. To me, that's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as like I did a thing on Las Cruces that happened in Las Cruces, and now like the next three like programs or the next two programs I listen to, it's also in Las Cruces. Like that's different.
That's not
That
the
is
same.
not the same
Okay.
thing.
It's in the family. It's in
I
the
don't think it is.
family
I think
of
it's I
weird.
think it's an energetic thing, but I'm real woo woo. So I think that there's more to it than that.
I'm pretty woo-woo. I can get on board
I think
with
there's
that.
more to it than that. And I think that because we spend a lot of time together and we
Okay.
tell each other stories a lot, I think that we have like an energetic connection and we don't really even notice it when we're doing it, but we're having a conversation even when we're not talking to each other,
Well, good. Then I feel like I certainly won't be left behind in some other life.
100%. There's no fucking way.
Okay. Okay. Phew. Good. Dodge that bullet.
Why don't you tell me about something horrible that happened in this life?
I will. I will. And very close to our lives because we're actually going to Ording, Washington.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's north, right? Is that north?
It is. It's sort of at the base of Mount Rainier, actually. So that's south.
Oh, that's south.
South. It is. No, it isn't. It's south.
No.
I literally have
Yeah,
it right in
okay.
front of me. I just trying to be agreeable. Okay, so Ording, Washington. It's a pretty small community in Pierce County. The population is approximately 7,500, located at the base of Mount Rainier. There's like a handful of restaurants and a handful of stores and a river that is fed by the mountain that runs through it. And that's about
This is
it.
kind of the area. This is kind of the area where that couple was murdered, and then there was the other couple, and they were like the tube sock killing. This is the area where the tube sock killing happened.
Yes. Oh man.
Same area.
Okay, well, my next sentence was there's very little crime, but again, I guess we stand corrected that that's just not true.
Yep.
It's very rural and everyone kind of knows each other.
Yeah.
So in June of 2015, when Nicole White went missing, like the entire town was talking about it. They were on top of it, volunteering, right? Big deal.
Mhm.
Nicole White's dad, Eddie Nito, described her as a bright light. She was his oldest daughter, and he said that she was full of color and extremely kind. She was beautiful. She was also really, really short, just like a tiny human, pint size. And she was very protective of her younger sisters. You're pint size and the oldest and you're like pocket size and full of spit and vinegar in a tiny package. Yeah.
Okay.
So you and Nicole have some things in common.
Okay.
At the age of 28, she was living in Ording, which was her hometown. She was the single mom of 2 boys. She got married pretty young, and unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. So she moved back to her hometown and was just focusing on kind of rebuilding her life, taking care of her kids, being close to family, which was her support network. Her mom, Jill, says that Nicole was doing really well. She got her and her boys into an apartment. She got a new car. She had a job. She was working really hard. But she was starting to become a bit lonely, not having a partner. So she started to dip her toe into online dating.
Oh, here we go.
Yep. Which was like, thank God or whomever, the universe, that I just reconnected with Michael, because I would be lost in the sauce being single at 40 and not, because there's no way. I would be too afraid to do online dating. I would be scared at every turn that I was about to be murdered.
But we've talked about this, right? Like there's no such thing as like safer dating than online dating. I mean, it's just the existence of women makes them susceptible to danger. Like
for sure.
Right?
But I think despite the fact that I host a true crime podcast, I have a tendency to be pretty idealistic and naive.
Yeah.
And people can be whomever they want online. And I am afraid that I'm the type of person that would believe them.
I mean, you know what? Know thyself. And yes, I'm glad.
Like,
There's lots of reasons why we're glad that you reconnected with Michael.
And to be fair, when I reconnect, well, yeah, that's like bottom of the list of why I'm glad.
Right.
He's amazing. But even before we met up the first time, he was like, "Shall I pick you up?" And I was like, "No, sir. This is not 1950. I knew you in a former life."
Remember when I covered Alex and Leah in England, and that guy that was like had the farm that he paid for, and he had the storage container, and he was taking sex workers there, and he had that gal that he was on like having like a WhatsApp conversation with for like 6 months that he reconnected with from high school after like 20 some years. And it's like, no, this guy's literally like on his way to being a serial killer, and she's like just like having a WhatsApp conversation with him like it's totally fine. And like I remember you said on that episode, like, you don't know who somebody is 20 plus years later just because you knew them in high school. Like,
no. And let's hope for all of us that we're not the same people that we were in high school. For fuck's sake.
Right.
God.
So super sidetracked. Nicole is dipping her toes in online dating.
She's dipping her toe into online dating.
And we're all feeling for her on that one.
Yep. Her best friend, Carrie Webb, and her sisters knew that she was using online dating services, and they warned her about the potential dangers. But it sounds like her parents didn't know that she was meeting people this way, which fair, Her younger sister,
you gotta like meet people somehow, and if you do it, there are safe ways to do it. I mean, people go meet up with strangers to buy things from Facebook Marketplace, and you got to be careful with that too. So it's like just online anything when you take it to the real world. There's ways to do it that keep you safer than not,
for sure.
Right? Like,
I know this is too many side stories, but one time, like I was totally unaware of like the buy nothing and Facebook, whatever, like in the early days. And I was babysitting for our younger sister when her daughter was like a baby. And this was when she was still out on that huge property with like no neighbors. Right. And I called her freaking out. I was like, someone legit just walked up to your front porch, took your stroller and walked off. Like stole your shit and walked off. And she was like, they were supposed to. That was from like buy nothing. And I was like, okay, a heads up would have been good. I was like, oh my God, we're being robbed. And I'm like in here. Like army crawling through the living room. Like, are they surrounding the home? Like it was totally just like some mom group of like, come pick up a stroller.
Oh my God.
Fucking idiot me. Okay, so her younger sister, Melissa, told her that you don't know who you're talking to online. People can pretend to be whoever they want, which is scary. But, Nicole was kind of a spitfire, and she was probably more, let me say this nicely, because I said that she was just like you. Thought of herself as more capable than she was, because she was literally 4'11" and like 90 pounds. And she's like, I got this. Well, you don't, but okay,
Yeah.
There was a Hulk inside of her.
Yes.
Which was probably
her inner Hulk. Inner Hulk.
Right. But she did share with her best friend, Carrie, all the different profiles of the guys that she was, maybe interested in. And she would let her know which ones she was thinking about meeting up
Mhm.
with, right? And one of these profiles was 29-year-old Jonathan Harris. Carrie never met John, but she did see his Facebook profile pic, and he looked like the type of guy that Nicole would be into. He was like a super rugged, outdoorsy type, which is not uncommon for the
Mhm.
area, right? John's friend Matt described him as like a big, dumb country boy.
Okay.
The two had known each other for about 10 years. They had worked as bouncers together, and Matt knew that John used a few different dating apps. Like, he was kind of a ladies' guy,
Mhm.
if you will. He was a super big guy, so everyone in town called him Big John, and everybody knew him. He was super flirty, and the women just kind of flocked to him. It all seemed like they all felt really safe around him and safe, like with him being in their presence because he was huge and but kind. So like intimidating to other people that might be have ill will towards these women. They're like, oh, I'll just walk around with Big John for the night and I'll be safe, right?
Right.
That kind of dude. So Nicole and John are talking online and they decide that they want to meet up for a first date, and they meet at a local bar called Jeepers, which was actually in Spanaway, which was about 15 miles from Ording.
Mhm.
Matt knew about John's date with Nicole. Matt had told him that he was going to go out and play pool with this cute little short girl. That's how he described her. And so they go to Jeepers, and Matt was the bouncer that night. So he saw the two of them there.
Mhm.
And Nicole had told her sister Melissa and her friend Carrie that she was meeting up with John and like where they were going to go and everything. So she's doing all the right things.
Right.
So Matt actually like observed them for the evening because he was working, and he said the two were having like a really great time. So, and Melissa later said like she did everything right. She met in a public place. She told people where she was going and who she was meeting. Like she did everything right.
Yeah.
So that first date went really well. And after that evening, the two continued to text each other, and they decided that they wanted to meet up again. So Nicole tells Carrie that she's going to meet up with John again. And she told her that they were going to Jeepers again. And Carrie was with Nicole as she was getting ready for her date. And Nicole's like trying on different outfits, right?
Mhm.
And she several times asked Carrie if she wanted to come out with them so that she could meet John. And Carrie told Nicole, like, no, like I'm good. Some other time, don't want to go out tonight, kind of thing. Ugh. So Nicole's mom, Jill, is watching her kids for the night. And Nicole told her that she would be home by midnight because she had to work the next
Mhm.
day. But Nicole did not come home that night.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm. So the following day, it was June 7th, 2015, and Carrie gets in touch with Nicole's mom and tells her, like, Nicole didn't come home last night. So I'm thinking that Carrie and Jill are roommates.
Oh, like she was the one who noticed that she didn't come home.
And that her
Even
kids,
though mom was watching the kids?
I think mom was watching the kids at her house.
Oh, maybe she
Mhm.
just figured, oh, well, they were just, maybe they were even going to stay the night anyway.
Right. That's what kind of what
Right.
I got out of it. Yeah. So Carrie calls, Nicole's mom. She's like, Nicole didn't come home that night. So Jill calls Nicole's work thinking like, oh, maybe she just went into work early, right? Maybe she was home, got up and already left. But
Right.
Nicole's employer says, no, she never showed up.
Oh,
And
no.
so that was really unlike her. And this is when Jill knew that something was very wrong. So Jill calls her youngest daughter, Melissa. Melissa hasn't heard from her either. There's no sign of Nicole's car or her. So Jill files a missing persons report. So Pierce County detectives are assigned to the case, and they go to Jeepers Bar, and they learn that Matt saw the couple there the night before. And so they pull the surveillance from the bar showing the couple inside having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Matt said they each had a couple of beers, but neither of them were like stupid drunk, right?
Right.
They stayed at the bar for about 4 hours until Matt announced that it was closing time. And he gave Nicole a hug and shook John's hand and told them, like, enjoy the rest of your night, be safe. And they left together in Nicole's Dodge Neon.
Okay.
So missing person posters are put up all over the community and a search team is formed. There's between 150 and 250 volunteers that come out to help look for Nicole. It's like a lot of people in that small town.
It's like the whole town. Where's the Hey John? What happened?
Oh, we're getting to Hey John, what happened?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. On the second day of Nicole being missing, police find her car in Graham, which is south of Ording and sort of, it's like directly in between Ording and Spanaway, like the halfway mark almost, but a little bit south. So when the car is found, her family thinks like maybe she broke down on her way home and started walking and something happened to her. But the vehicle looks like it's been staged. It wasn't on the road. It hadn't been in an accident. And it was like pulled off the road and parked between two trees.
Okay.
Like head first in between like these two trees.
Like, oh, just
which
pull
is
off
weird.
and park here like it's a parking spot.
Yeah. And like fully visible, but just like a weird place to leave a car and then walk off, right?
Yeah.
So it's a stretch of road that is just like heavily wooded on both sides. So they bring out search and rescue along with some like dogs to see if Nicole's scent could be picked up in those woods, but they didn't find anything. They're able to piece together her last known movements, of course. And so detectives go pay Jonathan Harris a visit. And he told them that he was out with Nicole until the bar closed. Then he asked her to take him to the AM/PM down the street, and then if she could give him a ride home after that. And she was like, yeah, no problem. But she told him, I do have to work in the morning. Right.
So no hanky-panky tonight,
he was
John.
like,
sorry.
No hanky-panky tonight, right? He's like, yeah, no big deal. He said that she took him to the AM/PM and he went inside to get whatever. And when he came back out, she was gone.
Liar. Fucking liar. Right there. Right there. What the fuck, Big John?
Big John's not even a good liar, because then he said he used the payphone at AM/PM to try and call her and ask her like, hey, where did you go? But she didn't answer. So he just walked home from there.
There was still a payphone at that time at AM/PM?
Great question. My next sentence is AM/PM doesn't have a payphone. There is no payphone. Not to mention the fact that he obviously has a cell phone because they've been texting each other.
Right.
Plus, if he didn't have his cell phone with him, I highly doubt that he knows her phone number. Like,
right.
Nobody knows anybody's phone number, especially a new person in your life.
Right. I know one phone number.
Is it our old house number?
Yes. That's the only phone number I know. Well, and 1-888-2300 Empire. I know that. Or whatever.
Stop it. What about Pure Money Mart? 800-855.
I don't even think I got the Empire number right, but you know what I mean? Like, I literally know one phone number.
Yeah, if you put a jingle to it, you can remember just about anything. So yeah, AM/PM doesn't have a payphone. Also, it's presumably 3:00 in the morning. He's in cowboy boots and he's going to walk 6 miles home. No. So they get the CCTV from the AM/PM and he was never there. There's no footage of him.
They didn't go to AM/PM.
They did not go to AM/PM. Jonathan says he just doesn't know where Nicole is. I don't know where she is. And that was kind of the end of the interview because they didn't have anything at that point to, So they do know, of course, that this story that Jonathan is telling them is not adding up. So they call him down to the station to be photographed. And Jonathan has injuries all over his body, including injuries that were clearly like deep scratch marks from somebody's fingernails, but he refuses to tell detectives how he got those injuries.
Fucking douchebag.
So with this, they're able to get a search warrant for his home. And also, since Ording is a military town, the FBI get involved.
What?
Yeah, because it's like military-ish property. And so they get involved, which actually they were stoked about because it gave them like more tools to work with that they wouldn't have, right? During the search of his home, they find several weapons and ammunitions. Oh, Amber. Ammunition can just be plural by itself. And so they're able to arrest him and hold him on unlawful possession of weapons and ammunition charges
Okay.
to just keep him somewhere safe while they,
Put the menace away.
put the menace away so that they have some freedom to investigate a little bit. So the FBI arresting him, the Pierce County's like, great, let's really work this case now because he's out of our hair. And also in the search of his home, they found blood-stained clothes that they gathered up and sent off to the lab for testing. They also talk in depth with Matt from the bar, the bouncer friend. And Matt tells detectives that night at the bar, he saw a very different side to Jonathan than what he has seen before.
Oh.
Yeah. He said that at some point during the night, a woman that Jonathan used to date showed up at Jeepers with her new man, and Jonathan's mood immediately changed. He said that at one point, Jonathan was sitting in like their outdoor seating area, and he was just like seething mad, and he took a beer bottle and smashed it on the ground.
Oh, lovely.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So Matt went out there and talked to him, and he was like, dude, you can't act like that. Like,
yeah.
You can't be smashing shit on the ground. But a little while later, Jonathan took another beer bottle and threw it against the outside wall and smashed that.
Okay, this guy's real fun. This guy's so fun. Safe with Big John. Yep, safe with Big John.
Yeah, this is the guy that we're all feeling safe around.
Okay.
I knew a guy safe with Big. I knew a guy like this once that other people perceived as like big such and such, like big teddy bear. And my spidey senses the first time I met him was like, nope.
Danger.
Not safe with, danger. Yep. So Matt goes out there, tells him he needs to knock it off. So detectives get in contact with this ex-girlfriend. Matt gives them the contact information so that they can talk to her about like what the deal was. And she tells detectives that she met Jonathan in 2010. They dated on and off until 2015. And she tells them that she could tell that he was angry that night because she was there with her new man. And she also tells them that when her and Jonathan dated, they would go to Jeepers often, and he would go home using like this back dirt road route to avoid the police, presumably because
in case because he was drinking.
He was drinking and driving. And so on this path, he more than once made a comment to her that this would be a perfect place to bury a body. No. So detectives are like, cool, could you take us to that road that you're talking about? And so she agrees. So detectives, along with ex-girlfriend and her new man, are driving down this dirt road with the windows down, and they immediately are hit with like the smell of a decomposing body.
Oh my God.
So they get out of the car and start looking around, but they end up finding, trigger warning for you animal lovers, a dead dog.
Oh.
They do not find Nicole. So back to the search here. Mount Rainier, for those who don't know, is one of the largest mountains in the U.S., and the forest around it is fucking vast.
Vast.
I've
been in it. It's vast.
Don't go in the forest, sister.
I go with people. I don't go alone.
You could walk for days and like not see a street.
Yep.
There's like thousands of acres of forest. So the task of trying to find Nicole is like super daunting, right? So this lead detective, I really like this Pierce County detective that was featured in this show that I was watching. He looks just like our cousin Shane.
Okay.
And he just is like, I don't know. I just get good vibes, you know? So he's like, I'm going to start going back through all of the reports, everything that has been written to see if there's some little sprinkle of something that I've missed, right? And that's when they notice that Jonathan's car has an ignition interlock device on it.
Ooh, a DUI, a blow and go.
Oh my gosh, you're in my brain. My sentence is, for those who may not know, it's commonly referred to as a blow and go. It's part of the punishment associated with the DUI charge that is implemented by the DOL, where you're required to blow into this device that's attached to your car. It takes your blood alcohol content, and your car won't start if you have alcohol on your breath. And it's not just when you're initially starting your car, it will go off randomly while you're driving so that you have to continuously do that, right?
Which would explain why he wanted her to drive.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yes. But the newer ones also take your picture so that you can't be having somebody else blow into it for you. Mhm. So this lead detectives go, Amber, words are hard. So the lead detective goes through the log and he sees that on June 7th, which is day one of Nicole missing, Jonathan has a picture of himself doing his blow and go around 6 p.m. But the kicker was that you can see the background in the photo and you can see like the trees behind him. And this detective is able, like, based on the road and like the surrounding area, he knows exactly where this is.
Oh.
Uh-huh. So he goes there with cadaver dogs. Searchers are in that area with the dogs for 4 days, but they do eventually find Nicole's body. Nicole was wrapped in a tarp and then a painter's canvas and thrown down into a ravine off the side of a logging road. I know. This is bad. I'm just
Oh.
going to tell you right now. This part is bad. The forensic anthropologist who examined Nicole said this was the worst case she had ever seen. She had a fractured skull, a fractured sternum, a fractured rib, fractured arm, and 3 broken bones in her hands. The injuries indicated that she had been beaten and stomped to death. I know. This woman literally is tiny, and this guy is fucking huge, like 6'4" or something, like huge. It's fucking awful. And the force of the injuries indicated like a frenzied killing because the force that was used was like way more than what would have been required to kill someone. So, of course, Jonathan is maintaining his innocence, but the clothing that was sent off for analysis to the lab comes back and, well, one, it matched the clothing that he was wearing in the footage at Jeepers that night, and it also came back as a positive match to Nicole's blood. They also sprayed luminol in his home and found large bloodstains on his carpet that were a positive match for Nicole. Yeah. So Pierce County detectives go to the federal detention center where he's being held on those weapons charges, and they charge him with second-degree murder and transport him to county jail. So it's presumed that, however he was able to do it, convinced her to come inside his house when she drove him home.
Yeah.
But it's just like, fuck, man. So during the court hearing, additional evidence was made public. The forensics team had done like a search on his computer, and it showed several searches for rape, murder, sex, strangulation during sex, like all of this dark shit. And his friend Matt was like, there was no indication that there was this side of him that was that, like none. Just freaked the fuck. Oh, no. So yeah, with all of this mounting evidence against him, he ended up changing his plea to guilty, and he was sentenced to 26 years in prison.
Oh my God.
This poor tiny woman. This guy is huge.
I'm over here. I'm reacting like wordlessly. I don't even have words.
I didn't either. It's hard to understand why. Like, if that was his plan all along, or if like his rage kicked in that night because of the ex-girlfriend. Not that that's an excuse, but like,
Right,
how is this person this way? And everybody knew him and thought of him as like this super jolly guy.
I mean, people wear incredible masks.
That's really scary.
I know. And again, this had nothing to do with online dating.
Mm-mm.
She could have met him at that bar organically, and this still could have happened.
Absolutely. I And I mean, Matt knew him for 10 years. They were friends.
Yeah.
You would think that there would be some glimpse of something of like, ooh, you're kind of not right.
It's also possible too that like Matt didn't notice because men don't notice the same things that women notice.
Yeah, I would be really curious about more of an assessment from this woman that he dated off and on for 5 years.
Same.
She, I'm sure, saw something.
Yeah, there's no way she didn't. That's not the kind of thing you can totally hide from people, especially if they're around you intimately for periods of time. Like that's going to, I don't know.
It's going to seep out somewhere.
Somewhere.
And I mean, even if I don't know, God, anyway, that was fucking awful. And I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I will forgive you eventually.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Ugh, poor Nicole.
And her family.
Her
and her
two
kids.
boys. I know. Her two boys. I know. Do you have a palate cleanser or that's the look of no? That's a no.
Not totally.
Okay.
Sorta.
Okay.
It's not nearly as bad, I don't think. Mostly.
Okay.
All right. August 14th, 1987.
Okay.
Police conduct a raid on a property in Lake Eildon in the state of Victoria, about 2 hours northeast of Melbourne, Australia.
Okay.
6 children were removed during this raid and placed in protective care. The property was called Kai Lama and belonged to Anne Hamilton-Byrne, leader of a group that called themselves The Family, and her husband, Bill.
The Family. Here we go. You're going to get all culty on me, aren't you? Oh, shit.
It's cult season, remember?
That's right. Cults are trending here at Crime, Wine, and Chaos.
Police had been tipped off about the house by a young woman who had been expelled from the group by Anne for being rebellious. Sarah, the young woman in question, had found help with a private investigator and some others in bringing the family to the attention of the police. The Victoria Police saw the case in front of them as a child welfare issue or something for the Department of Community Services to deal with, not a policing issue. But one officer had been digging into this group, and he didn't agree. So he writes a report recommending that the family be investigated criminally. It wouldn't be until late October or early November of 1989 when a detective in the drug squad would call this officer and tell them, hey, we're going to set up a task force, and do you want to come and be a part of it? And they had 3 months. They were given 3 months to dig in on the family. In January of 1990, the task force began interviews with the children rescued from Lake Eildon. Anne and Bill were not in Australia, and the task force wasn't sure where they were. So, of course, they couldn't bring them in for questioning. All they had from them was a TV interview that the two had done. And in that interview, they admitted to taking in 28 children over the course of 21 years. And they spoke to the children's appearance. They mostly all had bleach blonde hair because Anne wanted them to look like siblings. So she bleached their hair. And they all wore the same clothes because it delighted Anne to see them like that. And when asked why she took in all these kids, she said, I love children.
Oh, no. Okay.
These kids, when they were reported on, were referred to like oftentimes as like Village of the Damned because they were all these like white kids with like bleach blonde hair. It was kind of like, and they all wore the same outfits, but they were like these cute like white pants and like frocky shirts, like dresses for the girls. It was very like Village of the Damned meets like the Von Trapps.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay.
The family was a religious cult that had formed in the 60s near Melbourne, comprised mostly of upper and middle class professional types, headed by this woman named Anne Hamilton-Byrne, who claimed to be Jesus Christ reincarnated.
Stop it. Stop it. My God.
Anne started teaching yoga in the 50s and added meditation seminars to her offerings. Eventually, she decided she needed to start a school for the physical, the mental, and the spiritual control of the body. Then she met Raynor Johnson, who was the master of Queen's College. This guy is like this classic, stodgy English gentleman type who grew up in Leeds, super smart, graduated with honors from Oxford, worked in a prestigious laboratory at the very front line of nuclear physics research. And when he went to work at the University of Melbourne, the college thought they were getting this distinguished nuclear physicist. But by the time he got there, he'd lost interest in that. He had moved on to the world of spirits and spiritualism.
Oh, that's a hard pivot.
He believed he'd been chosen by a college of spirits in the beyond somewhere because he was a scientist and he would be able to speak to his peers in the worldly plane.
Whoa.
They would listen to him.
Oh, no.
And there was definitely a contingency where this was true. As a whole, the more liberal educated types at the time were very interested in spiritualism. It only took minutes, literally, upon their first meeting for Rayner to be all in with Anne, and they founded the Great White Brotherhood, later known as the Family.
The Great White Brotherhood? That sounds real gross.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Anne took the role of spiritual leader. She said she had to start it, that it was divine order, her mission, and the divine vision. And Rayner had no doubt in his mind that he had met his master.
Okay.
By the end of 1963, the cult was forming. Anne continued teaching her yoga class and using it as a recruiting ground for followers. Anne was hand-picking these people to bring them in, these upper class and middle class folks, lawyers, teachers, doctors, and other affluent professionals. And she had that thing that cult leaders have.
The charisma.
The presence.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped that she was also blonde-haired and blue-eyed and very attractive.
Yeah.
Strong, powerful, entrancing, beautiful, loving. All of these words have been used to describe Anne Hamilton-Byrne.
Yeah.
Beginning around 1964, Anne would lead a religious and philosophical discussion group at Santa Nikitan at Rayner's house on the eastern outskirts of Melbourne in the Dandenong Ranges, suburb of Ferny Creek. The group purchased an adjoining 5-acre property, which they named Santa Nikitan Park in 1968, and constructed a meeting hall called Santa Nikitan Lodge. Anne would hold meetings there 3 times a week. At the height of membership in the late 60s and early 70s, hundreds would attend, including people of high standing in the community. They would sit and meditate and wait and meditate, and then Anne would come out and preach every word she spoke there for decades, recorded onto tape.
What's with all these people? Really, the record keeping of a lot of
this is
these
a common theme.
Nuts.
Yes, the record keeping, the recording of it. Fucking L. Ron does it. She does it. Fucking Jim Jones did it. Like, it's a very yes.
Yeah.
Zebra. For posterity, Amber.
So weird.
Anne taught a mishmash of Eastern religions, the endless wheel of life and death and reincarnation and the karmic debt accumulated over all these lifetimes. And Anne was the one that canceled out your karmic debt prior to this life at your initiation ceremony, so that all the karma you had left to deal with was what you were born to this life to work through.
Okay.
She also promised them that this was their last life if they stood by her. Her official title in the family was the Master.
Ew.
According to one ex-member who was interviewed by a journalist, quote, Anne was the very center and soul and substance of the way of salvation laid down by the Supreme Father. Without the love and help of the living Master, no soul could ever be liberated from the material world. Sect members believed Anne Hamilton-Byrne could stop the endless reincarnations they were locked in. Members were obligated to do only what he thinks the Master will approve. Then essentially it is the Master acting, not the disciple. I went through a period where I would have died for Anne. Under these mind-expanding drugs, one was able to regress through one's life and back into past lives. This was clearing out things of the past. You had to go to Anne to get that clearing.
Mhm. Okay.
Anne only had one rule: do absolutely everything the master told you to do.
Okay. Easy peasy.
That could be anything from what to eat, what to wear, what to think, who to marry or not marry, total obedience. And the motto of the family was unseen, unheard, unknown. Membership of
Like they need to be.
Yes, membership of the family was both secret and represented members were of a spiritual elite.
But isn't it obvious when everyone's running around looking like Village of the Damned
Just the children.
that it's not a secret?
Just the children.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anne really thought she could just quietly infiltrate the upper ranks of Melbourne society and no one would know anything about it. And she kind of did.
Shit.
Anne seemed to especially grab hold of housewives, and as she did, their husbands were getting angry. They would go out to Ferny Creek to see what was going on at these meetings and come away even angrier. Newspapers were reporting on this yoga occult lady who was breaking up families. One woman tells how her own mother was pulled into the family, and when it all came down to it, her parents separated. Her dad had to sell their family home and move in with his own parents, while her mom took the money she earned in the sale and handed it over to the family.
Of course.
Of course. One investigative journalist had done a program on the family during this time, I believe in the late 60s or early 70s at this point, and spoke with former members who said that when people tried to leave the cult, they were forcibly taken to a psychiatric facility called New Haven Hospital and given shock treatment.
Oh my God.
They told the reporter of brainwashing, children who didn't know who their parents were, and locked away and never seen. When Rayner was interviewed for this report and asked about these allegations, he called it ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
He also denied that any drugs were ever used within the group. After the program aired, Rayner called his good friend, the owner of the television station where this reporter worked, who in turn told the reporter he had to do a follow-up to that program and it had to be a friendly one.
Gross. What the fuck?
This reporter was so certain that the family needed to be investigated for child abuse all the way back then that he took what he'd learned to the premiere, thinking that the police would sweep it all under the rug, since Rayner and Anne clearly had connections. But nothing was done about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anne and Rayner's connections were too extensive.
Sounds like it.
And they also had Dr. Howard Whitaker, who was looking for a medium who would help him use LSD and other hallucinogens to treat the mentally ill. And his old friend Rayner introduced him to Anne.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought him members of her cult as test subjects to experiment on with LSD and psilocybin at New Haven, which was a private psychiatric hospital. And they converted the owner of the hospital into a member as well.
She's using people as like lab rats?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
And the hospital became another recruiting ground for Anne. Many of the staff, including the doctors, were also converted to the family.
Mm-hmm.
So these pretty well-to-do folks who could afford to have themselves treated for traumatic shit in their life at this discreet private facility would be dosed with LSD. And then Anne would appear in their doorway in a white gown with a bucket of dry ice behind her, and they would come away from this experience believing that Anne was Jesus Christ reincarnated.
Stop it. There will be no survivors. What the hell? Okay. Dry ice.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They would treat members of the family here as well with LSD and what they called the clearing sessions. She also now had New Haven as leverage against the rest of the membership. She made sure they all knew that it only took 2 psychiatrists to commit someone, and they'd be there for years if that's what she decided.
This is so scary. This sounds like a very scary cult to try to escape from.
Right?
Okay, you started this story with a woman who got kicked out. Like, that sounds like a good way to just...
Well, she was a young woman because she was one of the children.
Oh, this is terrifying.
And this was many years later. This was in the 80s. This stuff's going on in the 70s. This is like the beginnings of it getting serious.
Oh, God. Okay. Mm-hmm.
But these clearing sessions weren't just for brainwashing. Anne would also use the powerful drug to get these members to tell her everything about themselves, all the way back to their early childhoods, and especially anything sexual or shameful. So she would have all the information she needed later to control them and manipulate them and to destroy their relationships and their marriages. One former member said he didn't know a single marriage that survived the family.
Oh my God. She's just blackmailing people.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And Anne was pulling in money wherever she could find it, which was why her targets for recruitment were most often people in the upper echelons of the community. Anyone who joined the cult had to pay dues. They also had to pay to do the meditations, to attend the yoga. She needed money to go do this or go do that. Members would fork it over. Even the aunties, as they called them, doing the bulk of the work of the cult, they had to pay Anne for the privilege of caring for the children. And by the early 70s, members were giving the majority of their income to Anne. Wow. After the raid in 1987 on the Lake Alden property, it was estimated that Anne was worth more than $50 million.
Holy shit.
Anne had her own vision while on an acid trip that she needed to collect children from birth because one day there was going to be either World War III or natural disasters galore where most of the population will die. And she had to prepare her family so they could re-educate the world when that time came. Mm-hmm. She preached that UFOs would arrive and the children needed to have impeccable discipline so that when those UFOs did arrive, the children would not hesitate and just walk single file right onto the spaceships. And then these spaceships would take off. They'd go off the planet until the apocalypse was done and then bring the kids back who would then tend to what was left of the world.
Uh-huh. It's giving Heaven's Gate vibes. What?
100%.
Oh my God. She's got a little bit of everything.
She's got a little bit of everything. She's got, it's a grab bag. Anne's philosophy is a whole grab bag.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The allegations against Anne were that not only had she been basically stealing infants for a long time, but using LSD on the children as part of her brainwashing indoctrination of them as well. Children in the family were given their first clearing when they turned 14 as initiation into the family, although one child later after escaping the cult would say that he remembers an LSD experience he had when he was around 8.
God, that has got to be so scary.
I can't.
No.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
14 of the children were raised believing that they were, in fact, siblings. They were Anne and Bill's children, and the rest were foster children, which were the children of cult members who would either come up on the weekends or would come to stay for long periods, many of them for years. Mm-hmm. Not all the children had their hair bleached, though. The redheaded children were allowed to keep their hair natural because Anne herself was actually a natural redhead. Her own blonde hair came from a bottle or a wig. The children were kept separate from the rest of the world. They were discouraged from interacting with anyone. They were instilled with a sense of us and them. So that property where the kids were taken from on that raid, that's where the kids all went. That's where the kids lived. And the only people...
And none of these kids went to school or anything like that, right?
No one was allowed to even really come out there and see those kids. The only members that even were ever really out there were the aunties who were in charge of them. Which were basically like Anne's lieutenants, like her most trusted, right and left hand ladies in the cult.
Right.
Anne and Bill also had property in Langton Green, 10 acres in the stockbrokers belt in England with a 15th or 16th century house on it with tunnels that go all the way out to Brighton. Anne and Bill would pack up and head off to this property when things got too hot with authorities in Australia. The house was huge with additions built on, and one section of the house was entirely for Anne. They also had some property in the U.S., in Hurleyville, a town in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. This was not a random location, this property in New York. For several years, Anne had developed a connection to the Siddha yoga movement, receiving Shaktipat initiation from Swami Muktananda and taking the Sanskrit name Ma Yoga Shakti. Swami Muktananda was the head of a multi-million-dollar empire and described by his followers as one of the most significant figures in contemporary spiritual life. Based in India, Muktananda traveled the world recruiting and showing people the way. In the 70s, a lot of gurus were traveling from India into the West and obtaining money and fame and power through teaching so-called spiritual enlightenment, and Muktananda was one of the biggest. He was followed by tons of celebrities and had ashrams and centers all over the world, thousands and thousands of devotees. In 1979 and 1981, Anne took some of the children to stay with Muktananda at his ashram South Fallsburg, New York. And eventually she and Bill purchased the Hurleyville property very near that ashram. When she traveled there with the children, she would take them to the ashram every day, supposedly in the hopes that she'd get some followers of her own there.
Mm-hmm.
Anne claimed to have certain powers, and she was said to be able to curse people if they did anything wrong or if anyone was trying to hurt the family. A former follower of Muktananda believes that he himself practiced some kind of black magic and that it was this knowledge that Anne wanted to learn from him.
Okay.
Sarah, the young woman at the beginning who was kicked out by Anne, later recalled how Muktananda would give a private audience once a week to the family. He once asked the children if they would like to leave the family and live with him at his ashram in India. The children all gave an enthusiastic yes, but were later punished by Anne for disloyalty.
That's shitty.
According to Sarah, Anne eventually caused a lot of trouble at the South Fallsburg ashram, and some of Muktananda's devotees defected to the family. Sarah was present when Swami Tejo Mayanand was initiated into the family, later saying that she could not understand why he would want to join a sect where everyone was so miserable when it seemed like everyone around Muktananda was so happy.
Yeah.
When Anne and Bill traveled to the US or the UK without them, the children in Eldon were left under the care of cult members, a very select few who were the only ones entrusted to raise the children. Because the children weren't just kept in isolation from the outside world, they were also isolated from the rest of the cult. Most of the members had no idea what was happening to these kids.
Shit.
What anyone, I know, and what anyone outside that inner circle saw was film of the children running around in their matching outfits in this country setting, looking happy and cared for, when in fact, most of these films were made upon the return of Anne and Bill from one of their overseas trips, when these near-starving children were excited to see Mummy and Daddy and promised to be fed chocolate and sweets after these shots were filmed.
That is so gross. Oh my God, these poor children. Mm-hmm.
Or they saw the children when they were bussed into a gathering to sing for the members and then shuttled back off to the lake house.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, the women who tended to the children starved them, beat them, and did all sorts of horrible things to these children. One of the longtime aunties that looked over the kids was Dr. Howard Whitaker's wife, Elizabeth, who the rescued children claimed was violently abusive. Mm. The children spent their entire day, every day, in the same routine. Yoga, meditation, school for most of the day, more yoga, more meditation, and then to bed. They were also highly medicated. One of the children later reported that she was given anatensol, which is used to treat schizophrenia, Integratol, which is an anti-seizure medication, Mogadon, which is in the benzo family, and Valium every single day, morning and night.
Oh my God. For years? Like this is their whole ass life. This is so awful.
Yes. Withholding food was a common form of punishment. It was normal to be deprived of meals for a day, sometimes up to 3. One survivor said the longest she remembered going without food was a week. When Anne and Bill would return from travel, they would take over the discipline, and Bill was said to be especially violent and brutal with his beatings. One of the children removed from the property, the youngest one, had been diagnosed with psychosocial dwarfism. That basically means that the abuse she was enduring in this harsh, uncaring environment prevented her from producing growth hormones.
Oh my God.
She was measured to have grown 2 centimeters within 1 to 2 weeks of being removed from the cult.
That quickly it started turning around for her. That's insane.
Right? I've never heard of that before.
Wow. I haven't either. I didn't even know that could happen.
I didn't either. The only way to figure out who these kids and young people actually were, though, was to track down their parents through blood samples. It was one of the first times in Victoria that DNA was used to prove parentage. The police had to track down potential parents and bring up either a very traumatic time in the case of the mother or an absolute surprise in the case of some of the fathers. In the 70s, there was still very much the stigma on young single mothers, especially teen moms. And so when these girls and young women went to the doctor, they'd get a mark on their record that would send them to social services. And it was almost just assumed that these soon-to-be moms would put their kids up for adoption. Like it wasn't even a question. And if they tried to question it, they were shut down and told there was no way they were keeping their baby.
Wow.
At some point, they would be secreted away somewhere to hide their pregnancies, give birth, give up their babies, and come back like it had never happened. These babies were taken from them without these moms even being allowed to see their baby.
Oh.
One member of the family in a police interview said she herself had made maternity clothing for Anne for years and years, and that Anne was basically always pregnant. Anne insisted to the children that she claimed as her own that she was their biological mother. In truth, she had members of her cult in hospitals and social services that would take these babies from unwed young moms right at birth, file fraudulent paperwork to take these babies for herself and Bill, and also for some of the members of her cult. Of course.
Did she ever birth any of her own children?
She had one child of her own very early on in her life.
Okay.
Of course, Anne's age alone meant there was no way she was the mother of these children, but no one in the family questioned it. One of the
she just wearing like a pregnancy suit.
She would wear these big. The gal that was making, she'd wear these big flowy shirts, and like it would, so you couldn't tell. She just pretended to be pregnant all the time.
Wow. Okay, that's fucking wild.
One of the children Anne and Bill claimed as their own was actually the daughter of Bill's son, Michael. Michael met a woman named Trina at New Haven, and after their daughter was born, Trina was too unstable to watch after her, and she was already in Bill and Anne's care, so they pushed some paperwork in front of Trina and Michael and had them sign over guardianship to Bill and Anne. And Michael thought he was doing what was best for his daughter. Yeah. Another one of the children was adopted by a couple in the cult who then promptly turned her over to Anne and Bill. She would later grow up and be one of the rescued children and find out that within a year of her adoption, her biological mother had married and was searching for her.
Oh, God, this is so awful.
It's bad. And this was Anne's tactic, get her followers to adopt babies and then turn them over to her and Bill. This made the paper trail essentially non-existent. Anne told the children that she was related to Scottish royalty, that she had tea with the Queen. She was an opera singer with a castle somewhere in Europe. She, of course, was Jesus reincarnated, and her children were descended from the house of David, which is Jesus's bloodline. Both the children and her followers believed the tales she wove about who she was, that her red-haired mother was actually Scottish, the source of her royal lineage via France, that she was psychic, that she was the pupil of a spiritual teacher, that her father was an inventor and a close friend of T.E. Lawrence, who was a famous British Army officer and archaeologist whose wartime activities in the Middle East was fictionalized in the movie Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay.
And that her childhood home was a grand mansion with massive grounds. She also claimed she attended a prestigious private school as a girl, Furbank Girls Grammar. In reality, Anne was born Evelyn Grace Victoria Edwards on December 30th, 1921 in Sale, Victoria, Australia. She was the eldest of 7 children in a working class family. Her father, Ralph, a World War I veteran and railway yard worker, was often absent, sometimes to avoid debt collectors, but mostly because he found home life intolerable. And her mother, Florence, Ralph's second wife, a British-born woman who claimed to communicate with the dead, was intermittently hospitalized for paranoid schizophrenia. It is reported she once set her hair on fire in public.
Oh my God.
Evelyn, presumably her siblings, spent part of their childhood in Brighton Orphanage, placed there more than once. This orphanage was in the middle of a nice area where she would be able to see privileged children walking by, attending their private schools, while she attended Sunshine Primary, a state-run school. She married her first husband, Lionel Harris, who was a corporal in the Australian Air Force in 1941. They had one child together, Judith, born in 1943. In 1945, Lionel applied to leave the Air Force because he was worried about Evelyn's mental health. He said she was very abnormal to their child and her behavior was very strange. Her medical records note that Evelyn was depressed and neglecting Judith. He feared she inherited her mother's mental instability and may give way. 10 years later, Lionel is a car salesman and they've moved to Sydney. On January 5th, 1955, Lionel is returning home to Sydney from New South Wales to meet the baby boy that he and Evelyn had just completed final arrangements to adopt when he gets into a horrible car wreck. Lionel would die from the injuries he incurred in that wreck 3 hours after being admitted to the hospital. But in 1955, a single woman couldn't adopt a child.
Uh-huh.
This was not going to stop Evelyn from her dream of having a large family. However, Evelyn underwent cosmetic surgery, took speech lessons, and changed her name to Anne Hamilton.
Wow. Cosmetic surgery to do what?
Face work. She had work done on her face.
Okay. Ugh.
Soon after, she recreated herself as a yoga teacher in Melbourne, training with Margaret Segisman, a Swiss woman who had, quote, lived in Indian ashrams and followed a Tibetan guru and claimed to have lived in an Indian cave for 5 years.
Okay. Sure.
Apparently, Anne only received 3 months of training from Margaret when Margaret asked Anne to leave after she put a spell on a fellow student.
We don't do that here. You need to go.
Bye.
Bye.
Anne married Michael Riley, a South African naval officer, in 1965, but the marriage soon ended. There are gaps in her early life, mostly because Anne was a chameleon, changing her name, her husband's, her age, and her image at will, and her frequent facelifts, liposuction, and blonde wigs ensured that she appeared 10 to 15 years younger than her actual age.
Mm-hmm.
She taught Hatha yoga, which in 1959 Australia was pretty new and exotic, and set up a yoga studio where her clientele was mostly wealthy middle-aged women who were bored and unfulfilled. Then she started adding eclectic spiritual teachings to her classes, mixing Hindu and Christian ideas with elements of the occult, like astrology and Ouija boards.
Right.
It was the late 70s when Anne set her sights on wealthy businessman William Byrne and decided he would be her next husband. Bill had a wife,
Oh.
May, and 4 children. May tried to fight Anne about this. She wasn't going to just hand over her husband to Anne, and very quickly May was locked away at New Haven, heavily medicated, with no idea if she would ever get out.
Oh my God. Did May get out? I hope she got out.
I don't know what happened to May. Anne visited her in her
Oh.
room and told her that Bill belonged to her. Anne and Bill were married in
Oh.
1978.
Okay. Wow.
Anne and Bill fled overseas immediately following the raid at the Lake Eldon property, but she was still in control, directing the group over the telephone. Anne was certain people were trying to kill her, and she instructed her membership still in Australia to burn all their records, and they did. Everything that could be destroyed was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Too much time had passed for police to get any physical evidence of the drugging of the children with the LSD, and they were unable to press charges for that. The head of the task force filed a report suggesting that there was rampant theft, forgery, and abuse of all kinds that could be investigated, and there were many witnesses that had lost so much from the cult that they could and would testify in such a case, but the report resulted in no actions.
Oh, God.
Investigative reporters had several defamation cases brought against them for their reporting by members of the family, but not Anne. She doesn't do her own dirty work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just lawsuits. Car tires were being slashed, death threats were coming in, even some shots had been fired through some windows. So these are real and present dangers that are being presented by anyone digging into the family.
Oh my God.
The task force is underfunded and couldn't track Anne or synthesize all the intelligence it had collected, and someone leaks documents about the lack of funding. The department gets publicly shamed into giving the task force more resources. And just like that, 19-year-old Roland Webb, one of the kids, gets picked up and charged with threatening to kill police and a reporter. Eventually, police were able to find an attorney, Peter Kibbe, who had left the family, and he was like one of the attorneys for the family. And they had evidence that he had lied on a court document. So they charged him with perjury and then basically were like, hey, why don't you help us out? Give us evidence on these people.
Yeah.
So we can prosecute Anne and Bill and others like high up in the family. And he was more than happy to do it. Anne had destroyed him, literally. He had had a severe case of OCD and had been told by Anne that if he just obeyed her and did what she said, she would cure him.
Oh, God.
Part of her cure was to have him undergo a leucotomy, which is another name for a lobotomy.
No.
And of course, this was brain damage that made his behavior even more bizarre than it was before.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The work the task force did with Peter over 3 months as they pored over all the legal documents that he had handled for Anne provided them with a ton of evidence that the prosecution could use to prove illegal means of obtaining children, which became the primary focus.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they all wanted to get them for the abuse of the children. They just didn't have the kind of evidence they needed to win that case.
Right.
Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne are charged with perjury and conspiracy to defraud based on the evidence that none of the children they claimed to be theirs were actually theirs, and an extradition warrant is issued to get them back to Australia.
Okay.
They finally confirmed that the two were on the Hurleyville property, and the FBI actually made the arrest. Once they finally got them back to Melbourne and in front of the judge, the two were granted bail.
No. See you on Monday. Letting you out for the weekend.
Well, it's interesting because one of the leads on the task force said that the public, especially, and the children that deserve to see justice were extremely upset that the court proceedings surrounded Anne and Bill was all about these legal documents and fraud and shit and not the abuse.
Yeah.
But part of an extradition agreement is that when you bring people back for charges, you can only charge them with what you filed on the extradition warrant.
Oh.
So part of the agreement is that you won't slap them with a bunch of additional charges. So even if they did have the evidence to prosecute for the abuse, they couldn't do that without opening a whole other can of legal fucking worms.
Right. That's kind of shitty.
It is shitty. And then one of the charges gets dropped because it pertains to New Zealand, where this particular illegal adoption had occurred, and it can't be tried in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So the only charge left is conspiracy to commit perjury, to which both Anne and Bill plead guilty. And so finally, 4 years after the beginning of the operation to investigate Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne and the family, on September 26, 1994, they are sentenced to a $5,000 fine.
No. Are you fucking kidding me? They stole like 28 children and they get slapped with a $5,000 fine?
Yeah. So
oh my God.
Part of the issue was that a lot of these kids that they took for themselves, like the 14 that they claimed were theirs, a lot of them came from these private adoption routes that, while not necessarily moral or totally above board, were not technically illegal at the time.
Mm-hmm. So gross.
Other members of the family also faced charges related to falsely obtaining sums of money, mostly between the years 1978 and 1988. It doesn't look like any of them got any jail time, though, so I imagine they all got fines as well. Bill died in 2001 of kidney failure. He left his entire estate to Anne. His 4 biological children, the ones he had with May, they weren't even mentioned in his will.
Motherfucker.
He had no gravestone, because he was unseen, unheard, unknown, even in death.
Wow.
Anne's attendance at his funeral was her only public appearance the rest of her life after her conviction. In August of 2009, 2 lawsuits filed against Anne resulted in settlements. Her biological granddaughter sued for alleged psychiatric and psychological illnesses, alleging malnourishment and cruel and inhuman treatment. Her award was estimated to be $250,000. A former member of the family alleged that she paid the sum of over $350,000 to Anne for real estate in Olinda, but the property was never transferred to her. She also alleged that she paid Anne another $70,000 plus for another property, but this too was never transferred to her. Anne said she had no memory of the transaction.
Of course she didn't. And none of those aunties got any child abuse charges?
Nope.
Oh my God, this is infuriating.
The judgment for that former member was estimated to be another $250,000.
Uh-huh.
Anne Hamilton-Byrne was diagnosed with dementia and placed in a care facility where she lost all semblance of herself. 2 of her trusted disciples were granted power of attorney over her legal and financial affairs and promptly started carving up her estate and selling off her properties. Except her Life for All Foundation, which was a nonprofit for cats and dogs. She had started pouring all of her assets into the foundation in order to keep any of the children from inheriting anything after she passed. She died the 13th of June, 2019, at the age of 97.
This fucker lived until she was 97 years old?
She did. And that is Anne Hamilton-Byrne and the family.
That was wild.
Mm-hmm.
Sister, where do you find this shit? My God, those poor kids.
I know. And it's really like, so there was this like 3-part documentary series. I'll link it in my show notes. The only way you can watch it is if you have Prime and you watch it on a laptop where you can use a VPN to pretend like you're in Australia because it's not available in US Prime.
Oh, sure.
But anyway, it's a 3-part documentary about all this. And it's from the perspective, a lot of it's from the perspective of a couple of the investigators on the task force. And a couple of the journalists, the investigative journalists that like spent like a lot of their career like tracking down and reporting on the family. And all of them spent all this time with those 6 kids that were rescued in that raid.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the other ones, like Sarah, who had gotten out before the raid. And all these people, even these men, these grown ass mustached old investigators, they're like moments where they have to take a moment and like wipe their tears because they got so close to these kids and they were so invested and they wanted so badly to bring justice on behalf of these kids for what happened to them. And they are still haunted by the fact that they were unable to do that for them.
Yeah. Oh my God. Those poor fucking kids. That's awful.
I recommend the documentary series if you can, do the finagling to watch it, because I left out a lot because it was, 3 hours and there was a lot in there. But I mean,
yeah.
Anne is like, she's got this like big curly, teased out blonde hair and these blue eyes, and she's thin and she's beautiful. And she had love bombing down. Everyone who was like, she brought everyone in with full love bombing. Like she had that shit down. And then you spent your entire membership wondering, wait, does she really love me or not? Like that whole fucking thing, right? She had that shit.
Oh,
and it was, and she's just like, if you just saw her, like, if you just like, you could just see her like, drinking a mimosa at brunch around you know what I mean? Like, she's just, I don't know how else to, do you know what I mean?
Just good vibes
just
only.
Really, like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
She really presented herself as this high society, like sweet, loving mother figure that just loves everybody.
Ew. See, here's another one. Both of our stories had people that just deceived the fuck out of people as being like, I'm super, like, I'm a safe space. I'm just all love and good stuff only. Yeah. It's so creepy. It's so creepy. I hate it.
Yeah. And it's wild because, like 28 kids in total, like lived in that house at the peak of, right. And it's like all these like stolen babies. And in the public was like, how are we allowing this woman to get away with having stolen babies?
Mm-hmm.
And there were like former members who were like, when I left, I should have said something back then. Like, yeah, you should have said something back then. Like there were people who left who knew what was happening to those kids and didn't do anything to step in and help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of those fucking aunties, all of those women collectively just being okay with abusing children is wild to me.
Loyal and dedicated to Anne to the bitter fucking end. Like those people who were still like diehard devotees of Keith Rainier, even while he's sitting in prison,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly like that.
Wow. That brainwashing goes deep, I guess.
I mean, she's using fucking hallucinogens and shit to like reorder these people's brains. That
fucking
kind of
fog machines or whatever. That is weird.
Wild.
Oh, wow. Well, I hated that.
I hope this worked because this reload button has been talking to me this whole fucking time, and now it's gone.
You've got sound. You got sound lines, and we've got a recording that says we're good. So I'm going to trust the process.
That was an hour and 26 minutes. Holy shit. We had a long one today. Yeah. I'm sorry, sister.
That's right. Why are you sorry?
I talked a lot.
I did too. This is what we do here.
Okay. Okay. Hey, you guys, if you want to hear more of us talking, You can go join the Patreon for $5 a month. You'll get a bonus episode every month. Plus, you get to hear the new episodes every week a day early. And we do virtual wine nights once in a while, so you can hang out with us and we can chit chat. So go on over and join the club. You can also join for free just to see the conversation going on over there with stuff that's not behind the paywall. And we'd love to have you. So give us a review wherever you listen to us. But if you're on an Apple product, you can go give us a typey one, which we love.
That's the preferred. We love it. We love the typies.
Be like Scott. Send us an email.
crimewineandchaos@gmail.com. We'll respond. Ask Scott. He'll
we
tell
will
you.
respond. Yes. Amber receives the love letters. I receive the hate mail, but it all goes to the same inbox. So
That's correct.
Send us a note. Sister, I love you.
I love you.
This was super chaotic today.
Chaotic. Yeah. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye.
Joshua M. Davis. Music by Jeremy Williams. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/crimewineandchaos. Cheers. It says warning. Naomi's recording
Mine says
has
video
a warning.
upload problem.
I'm like, what warning?